In the previous section, Odysseus told the story of his travels and his imprisonment on Calypso's island. After hearing Odysseus' tale, King Alcinous urges everyone to give him gifts and arranges for a ship to take him home. They sail out, and before reaching Ithaca, Odysseus falls asleep. The sailors unload Odysseus on the shore and sail away, leaving Odysseus to wake up alone. At first, he doesn't recognize Ithaca, and he worries he's been tricked again. Athena appears in the form of a young shepherd boy and tells Odysseus where he is. He gets emotional knowing he's finally home, but he chokes back his emotion. He doesn't recognize Athena, so he hides his identity and tells this elaborate lie about how he killed a guy and now he's a fugitive. Athena reveals her true form. She says she helped him to get home, and now she's going to help him with his new trial, killing the suitors. She transforms Odysseus so no one will recognize him, and tells him to go find one of his servants, the swineherd, while she goes to Sparta to call Telemachus home and warn him about the ambush the suitors have planned. Odysseus goes to the hut of the swineherd, Eumaeus. Eumaeus doesn't recognize him, and as they talk, he says over and over how much he misses his master. But Odysseus doesn't reveal his identity. Instead, he tells another elaborate lie, making up a whole life story that ends with him being enslaved by sailors. Meanwhile, Athena goes to Sparta and finds Telemachus. She tells him to go back to Ithaca at once. She warns him about the ambush of his ship the suitors are planning, and how to get around it. When he arrives home, he should go straight to the swineherd's place, and spend the night there. When Telemachus reaches Ithaca, he goes to see Eumaeus, and he sees Odysseus there, still disguised as a beggar. Telemachus asks Eumaeus to go to his mother, and let her know that he's alright. Eumaeus leaves, and Athena removes Odysseus' disguise. Telemachus doesn't know who he is at first, since he was just an infant when Odysseus left for Troy 20 years ago. Initially, he doesn't believe Odysseus when Odysseus reveals his identity, but Odysseus convinces him, and they have a happy, tearful reunion. Telemachus provides Odysseus with some details about the suitors. He counts 108 of them, plus servants, and father and son plot their revenge. That night, the suitors gather in Odysseus' palace for dinner. They saw Telemachus earlier when he went home to see his mother, and they realized he'd made it past the ambush. Now Telemachus is there, and Odysseus, still in disguise, and Eumaeus both show up. Odysseus goes around to the suitors begging for scraps, and he gets into an argument with one named Antinous, who gets angry and throws a chair at him. Odysseus gets into a few more confrontations before the night is over. Once the suitors have gone home for the night, Odysseus tells Telemachus to lock up their weapons and armor, which they always leave at Odysseus' palace. That way, when he takes his revenge, they'll be defenseless. Penelope comes down to speak to the stranger, in hopes that he has some news about Odysseus. He makes up a story about meeting Odysseus when Odysseus stopped at his house on the way to Troy. He says he saw Odysseus not long ago, and he knows Odysseus is on his way home. The next day, the suitors gather for another feast in Odysseus' palace. While they're eating and drinking, Penelope announces that she's finally going to choose a man to marry, and she proposes a contest to determine who it'll be. Each of the suitors must string Odysseus' bow and shoot an arrow through 12 lined-up axes. The man that can do it will be her husband. A few of the suitors try to string the bow, which involves flexing it into the proper shape and then getting the string in place to hold it taut, but none of them are strong enough to do it. Odysseus asks for a turn. The suitors object at first, but they finally give in. Odysseus strings the bow with ease, and he fires an arrow straight through all 12 axe handles. Without warning, Odysseus leaps up and shoots the suitor Antinous through the throat. Then he reveals to the suitors who he is. Chaos erupts through the hall as Odysseus picks them off one by one. Odysseus tells Telemachus, the swineherd Eumaeus, and a cowherd who was nice to him, to run to the storeroom and bring back armor and weapons. The men return with the equipment, but one of the suitors sneaks out through a smoke duct in the wall and brings back equipment for the suitors. A huge melee breaks out, and Odysseus, Telemachus, Eumaeus, and the cowherd fight until they've slaughtered all the suitors. When all the suitors are dead, Odysseus has Eurycleia round up the disloyal servant women who are sleeping with the suitors. He makes them clean the hall, and when they're done, Telemachus and the two herdsmen march them outside and kill them. Eurycleia tells Penelope that Odysseus has returned, and Penelope goes downstairs and finds Odysseus in the great hall. She doesn't believe it's him at first. He looks like her husband, but it's been 20 years since she last saw him. She tests him by asking Eurycleia to bring the bed out of their bedroom in front of him. Odysseus speaks up immediately, saying it's impossible to move the bed. He carved it himself from a large olive tree that grew out of the floor, and he built the walls of the bedroom around it. Penelope is convinced, She runs to Odysseus and embraces him. She says she worried that some impostor had come claiming to be her husband, but now he's home at last. Odysseus says he has to sail out once more, to plant an oar far inland, in order to appease Poseidon. But once that's done, they'll have peace. They go to bed, and Odysseus tells her everything he's been through. The next morning, Odysseus goes to see his father, Laertes. Laertes doesn't recognize Odysseus at first, and Odysseus makes up another story, calling himself Man of Strife, from Romer Town. But eventually, he reveals who he is, and he and his father hug and cry. They go inside and sit down to a feast with Telemachus and the herdsmen, as well as some friends of Laertes. The families of the suitors have found out about the slaughter at Odysseus' palace, and they've formed a mob to get revenge on Odysseus. They show up at Laertes' farm and threaten Odysseus and the others. Athena shows up in the form of Mentor, and Laertes spears the leader of the mob through the head. All hell is about to break loose, but Athena stops everyone and commands them to be civil. The families leave, and Odysseus feels he has peace at last. For more information about the Odyssey, check out the Odyssey SparkNote at www.sparknotes.com.